Jennifer Gledhill, Martin Hale, and Ethan Veynor, three names tied together by love, betrayal, and obsession. What began as a secret affair hidden in the shadows of a perfect suburban marriage spiraled into a deadly conspiracy that ended in blood. Behind Jennifer's polished smile and Martin's wealth lay a dangerous truth, one that Detective Lorna Greaves would uncover piece by piece, with Clara Denslow's heartbreaking testimony revealing how quickly passion can twist into murder. This is the chilling case of Jennifer Gledhill, a story where appearances shattered and secrets turned fatal. Jennifer Gledhill's life looked like the kind of story people dream of. She had everything: a beautiful home, a wealthy and respected husband, and a career as a nurse that made her seem both caring and dedicated. When she walked through the neighborhood, people often whispered about her elegance and the fortune she seemed to live in. Her husband, Martin Hale, was a man of status. He owned a growing business, was known for his sharp suits and confident smile, and often spoke at community events. Together, they were admired as a couple who had it all. The truth, however, was much darker than what anyone saw on the surface. Behind the doors of the Hale home, Jennifer's life was lonely. Martin was a man who believed success required constant work, which meant endless business trips, late nights at the office, and phone calls that stretched long into the evening. Jennifer tried at first to fill the silence with her job at the hospital. She took on extra shifts, stayed late to comfort patients, and busied herself with tasks. Yet as days turned into months, the emptiness only grew heavier. She would return home to a large house, filled with silence, with no one waiting for her, no warmth in the evenings, no companionship. For years, Jennifer convinced herself this was the price of security. Martin provided her with financial stability and the admiration of their community. She wore expensive clothes, drove a sleek car, and smiled for pictures at charity events. But each night the hollow feeling grew inside her. She longed for passion, for connection, for someone who saw her not as an accessory to a perfect life, but as a woman who still had dreams and desire. The turning point came one evening, after work, when Jennifer wandered into a local gym. She told herself she needed the exercise, a way to distract from the boredom. That was when she met Ethan Veynor. He was different from the polished businessman who filled Martin's world. Ethan was young, rugged, and magnetic. His eyes carried a spark that made Jennifer feel seen, and his attention was intoxicating. At first it was casual. He complimented her, encouraged her through workouts, and made her laugh in a way Martin never did. Soon, their connection deepened, slipping past the boundaries Jennifer had sworn maintain. What began as stolen conversations turned into secret dinners. What began as lingering glances turned into hidden embraces. She knew that being with Ethan meant betraying everything she had built with Martin. But each time she was with Ethan, the loneliness melted away, and she felt alive in a way she had not in years. The thrill of secrecy only added to the intensity. Every message exchanged, every meeting in dim corners of the city, made her feel like she was part of a dangerous game, one that she couldn't stop playing. But secrecy has a way of demanding more. Ethan was not content being hidden in the shadows of Jennifer's double life. He wanted her full attention, her full commitment. And Jennifer, torn between the security of her husband's world and the reckless passion Ethan offered, began to walk a line that grew thinner each day. She told herself she was in control, that she could manage both lives without consequence. Yet in reality, she was setting the stage for a tragedy that would shock everyone who thought they knew her. As the months passed, Jennifer's perfect image remained intact for the outside world. To the neighbors, she was still the elegant wife of Martin Hale. To Martin's colleagues, she was still the supportive partner who attended galas and smiled at every camera. But in the shadows, she was someone else entirely, a woman consumed by a secret affair, blind to the danger it carried. Each choice she made bound her closer to Ethan, and each moment she spent with him pushed her further from the life she pretended to value. By the time whispers of suspicion began to surface, Jennifer was already too deep. Her secret was no longer just an escape from loneliness. It had become an addiction, one that would soon spiral into something far more dangerous than she could ever have imagined. Ethan Veynor's presence in Jennifer's life quickly shifted from thrilling to consuming. At first he had seemed like an escape, a way to feel desired again, but the deeper she fell into the affair, the more she realized that Ethan was not a man who accepted limits. He was bold, restless, and carried with him an intensity that could be both magnetic and frightening. What had started as a few secret meetings soon became a routine of constant contact. Ethan called her late into the night, demanded to know where she was at all times, and pressed her with questions whenever she seemed distant. For Jennifer, the freedom she once felt in his arms began to feel like another kind of cage. Ethan wanted more than stolen moments. He began urging Jennifer to leave Martin, painting vivid pictures of a future where the two of them could live without secret. He promised passion, adventure, and loyalty. He swore he could give her everything she truly wanted if she was willing to take the risk. Yet Jennifer knew that leaving Martin was not so simple. Martin held not only their marriage, but also their reputation, their finances, and her carefully built image. If she walked away, she would lose the life she had carefully protected for years, and the thought of scandal terrified her. But Ethan didn't see it that way. To him, Martin was nothing more than an obstacle standing between them. The cracks in Ethan's charm began to show. He was quick-tempered, his jealousy surfacing whenever Jennifer cancelled a meeting or delayed answering his call. On more than one occasion he appeared uninvited, waiting near her workplace or outside her gym. He accused her of being afraid, of caring too much about her husband's money, of not being strong enough to choose real love. Jennifer tried to reassure him, but deep down she began to fear what he was capable of. She knew his history. He had once been arrested for assaulting a former partner, though the case never went to trial. She told herself people could change, that his intensity came from love, but the unease in her chest grew heavier every day. Jennifer's closest friend, Clara Denslow, started to notice the change in her. Clara had known Jennifer since college, and could see through her polished smile. When Jennifer finally confessed her secret, Clara was horrified. She warned her that Ethan seemed dangerous, that this relationship could destroy everything. Jennifer listened but refused to let go. The pull Ethan had on her was stronger than reason. She admitted she felt trapped, but at the same time, she couldn't imagine ending it. Ethan made her feel alive, and the fear that came with him was tangled up with the excitement she couldn't resist. The danger of being discovered hung over Jennifer like a shadow. Every time Martin returned from his business trips, she had to carefully erase messages, delete call logs, and act as though nothing had changed. She perfected the art of lying, rehearsing stories to cover her tracks. But the stress was starting to show. She grew restless at home, distracted at work, and constantly looked over her shoulder as if someone might expose her secret. The risk should have been enough to stop her, but instead, it only pulled her deeper. Ethan knew she was vulnerable, and he used it to his advantage. The balance of power in their relationship shifted. Jennifer had once believed she was in control, choosing when and where to meet, deciding how far things would go. Now Ethan dictated everything. He began leaving her little choice, showing up at places where she couldn't ignore him, threatening to reveal their affair if she dared to cut ties. It was no longer about passion, it was about possession. Ethan made it clear he would not be hidden forever, and if she refused to choose him, he was prepared to take matters into his own hands. Jennifer's double life was collapsing. To Martin, she still played the role of the devoted wife, but to Ethan, she was a promise yet to be fulfilled. She stood on dangerous ground, pulled between the life she had built and the dangerous passion that consumed her. Every decision grew heavier, and every secret brought her closer to an end she could not yet imagine. The affair that once seemed like her escape was tightening into a trap, and no matter which way she turned, she risked losing everything. The night that would change everything began like any other. Rain fell steadily, tapping against the windows of the Hale residence, and the sound of thunder rolled across the quiet suburban neighborhood. Martin Hale had returned home unexpectedly early from his latest business trip, pulling into the driveway with his suitcase still in the trunk. To most people this would have seemed ordinary, but to Jennifer it was a sudden disruption she had not prepared for. She had been expecting to see Ethan later that week, had even sent him a message earlier in the day, and now her careful balance between two lives threatened to unravel. Inside the house, tension brewed. Martin noticed small things that felt out of place. A glass on the counter that wasn't his, a faint scent of cologne that wasn't his own, and Jennifer's nervous movements as she tried to mask her unease. The rain outside seemed to mirror the storm inside, growing heavier as the night deepened. Neighbors later recalled that the lights in the study remained on well past midnight, unusual for Martin, who was known to retire early after long trips. What happened inside those walls would remain hidden until the next morning, but the pieces of the tragedy had already been set in motion. In the early hours, silence fell over the home. It was not until morning that the terrible discovery was made. Martin was found lying on the floor of his study, his body positioned awkwardly beside his desk. A glass of whiskey lay shattered near his hand, the amber liquid seeping into the rug. At first glance it could have been an accident, a stumble, a fall, a fatal misstep on a slippery floor. But when first responders arrived, they quickly noticed the inconsistencies. Martin bore deep bruises on his arms, as though someone had restrained him. More disturbing still, the back of his head showed clear signs of blunt force trauma. This was not an accident. It was a deliberate act of violence. Jennifer told investigators she had gone to bed early, claiming she hadn't heard anything unusual until she walked into the study in the morning. Her voice shook as she recounted finding Martin lifeless, but her story raised more questions than it answered. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing of value had been taken. Whoever killed Martin had been inside the house willingly, or had been let in by someone he trusted. The police began to suspect that the truth behind Martin's death was far more complicated than a simple break-in. As forensic teams combed the study, they uncovered a vital clue. On the rim of the whiskey glass lay a fingerprint that didn't match Martin or Jennifer. The print belonged to Ethan Veynor, a man who had no reason to be inside the Hale residence. This revelation shifted the investigation from a tragic mystery to a case of betrayal and deception. The timeline grew sharper. Surveillance footage from a gas station a mile away showed Ethan's car driving toward the Hale residence, just hours before Martin's estimated time of death. Phone records revealed late-night calls between Jennifer and Ethan on the evening of the murder. While Jennifer claimed she had been asleep, her phone data told a different story, placing her awake and engaged in conversations during the critical hours. Rumors spread quickly in the community. The perfect couple was no longer seen as untouchable. Neighbors whispered about Jennifer's late nights, her distracted demeanor, and the possibility that she had been living a double life all along. For many it was shocking to imagine Jennifer, so composed, so admired, being involved in something so sinister, yet the evidence seemed to pull her closer to the center of the crime. The scene in the study grew darker, the more investigators uncovered. A hidden drawer in Martin's desk contained financial documents showing unexplained withdrawals, amounts that had been transferred into an account under Jennifer's name. Combined with Ethan's fingerprint and his sudden silence in the days following the murder, suspicion thickened into certainty. The affair that Jennifer had tried to conceal was now laid bare before the investigators, and the consequences of her choices were unraveling with every discovery. The night of rain and thunder had ended with a man's life taken violently, but it also marked the collapse of the careful facade Jennifer had built. What began as a secret passion had now crossed into something far more dangerous, a crime that could no longer be hidden. The investigation had only just begun, but already it was clear. The truth behind Martin Hale's death was wrapped in betrayal, obsession, and a deadly conspiracy. Detective Lorna Greaves was known for her patience and persistence, and in the case of Martin Hale's death, she refused to accept surface explanations. From the beginning she sensed that the crime was not the work of an intruder but of someone intimately connected to the household. The fingerprint on the whiskey glass gave her the lead she needed. When the name Ethan Veynor surfaced, a picture began forming, one of infidelity, secrecy, and betrayal. But suspicions were not enough. She needed to build a case strong enough to withstand scrutiny, and that meant pulling apart Jennifer Gledhill's carefully constructed life piece by piece by piece. The first step was tracing Jennifer's phone record. The data revealed late-night calls and text messages between her and Ethan, often at hours when she had told investigators she was asleep. The number of calls was staggering, hundreds over the span of just a few months, far more than what could be explained by casual friendship. Each exchange hinted at the depths of their connection, and for Detective Greaves, it painted Jennifer, not as a grieving wife, but as a woman living two separate lives. Attention then shifted to financial record. Martin Hale had been meticulous in managing his business accounts, but investigators discovered irregularities. Large sums had been withdrawn in recent weeks, amounts that totaled into tens of thousands of dollars. The money had not vanished into thin air. It had been deposited into an account under Jennifer's name, one that Martin appeared to have no knowledge of. To the detectives, this suggested motive. Money, combined with the affair, created a dangerous formula: desire, greed and opportunity. The case grew stronger when security footage came into play. A gas station camera captured Ethan's car, heading toward the Hale residence on the night of the murder, his headlights cutting through the storm. He was not seen returning until hours later. Forensic teams also uncovered traces of mud near the back door of the Hale home, consistent with footprints leading in from the rain. While they could not directly tie the prints to Ethan, the timing and location left little doubt in the minds of investigators. Still, Jennifer clung to her story. She portrayed herself as the faithful wife, devastated by Martin's death, and blindsided by the evidence connecting Ethan to the crime. She admitted to knowing Ethan, but only as a casual acquaintance from the gym. Yet her composure began to crack when confronted with the sheer volume of phone records. When pressed, she shifted her story, admitting to an affair but insisting she had nothing to do with Martin's death. To Detective Greaves, this was not a confession of innocence, but a sign of desperation, a shifting narrative meant to keep blame at bay. Clara Denslow, Jennifer's closest friend, became a key voice in the unraveled. Distraught and betrayed, Clara told investigators about Jennifer's growing obsession with Ethan. She shared messages Jennifer had once sent her in moments of frustration, cryptic hints about wanting freedom, about feeling suffocated by Martin. One message in particular chilled investigators. Jennifer wrote that sometimes she wished she could start over without him in the way. While not a direct admission of intent, the words added weight to the theory that Jennifer had grown tired of her marriage, and had been seeking a way out. The deeper Detective Greaves dug, the more the web of lies collapsed. Ethan, tracked down after several days of silence, was found hiding at a friend's apartment. When questioned, his defensiveness gave way to panic. He admitted to being at the Hale residence the night Martin died, but claimed Jennifer had orchestrated the plan. According to him, she wanted Martin gone, not only to free herself, but to access his wealth. He described how she had prepared the whiskey with sedatives, and how he had delivered the final blow when Martin began to resist. Whether true or not, his statement placed Jennifer at the heart of the crime. What emerged from the investigation was not a single clear story but a clash of narratives. Ethan insisted Jennifer manipulated him, while Jennifer portrayed Ethan as a dangerous man who acted alone. Both accounts were riddled with contradictions, but the evidence linked them together in ways neither could explain away. The fingerprint, the phone calls, the money trail, the surveillance footage. It was all too much to be coincidence. Detective Greaves prepared her case with methodical precision, knowing that the trial would be brutal. The community that once admired Jennifer as a symbol of elegance and success now watched in disbelief as her secret surfaced. The picture-perfect life she had built was gone, replaced by the image of a woman standing accused of conspiring to kill her husband. For many it was unimaginable. For Greaves, it was the grim reality of how far people would go when love and greed entwined in the shadow. The unraveling was complete. The story Jennifer had worked so hard to protect had collapsed into fragments of betrayal, each piece pointing toward the truth she could no longer hide. The courtroom became the stage where the final act of Jennifer Gledhill's double life unfolded. Every seat was filled. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks, and cameras flashed outside the courthouse doors. The community that had once admired Jennifer and Martin for their polished perfection now gathered to witness the scandal laid bare. Prosecutors painted Jennifer as the mastermind, a woman who had grown tired of her husband's control and wealth, and had found in Ethan Veynor both a lover and an accomplice. They argued she had manipulated him into killing Martin so she could inherit his fortune,
and live freely without the chains of her marriage. The evidence was damning. Phone records, financial documents, Ethan's fingerprint on the glass, and surveillance footage showing his car near the Hale residence. The picture seemed complete, but the defense fought to tear it apart. Ethan sat across from Jennifer, in the courtroom, his presence a reminder of the dangerous path she had chosen. His testimony became the turning point. On the stand he recounted how Jennifer had confided in him about her unhappiness, how she had whispered about wanting Martin gone, and how she had promised they would be together once the obstacle was removed. He claimed she had drugged Martin's whiskey and urged Ethan to finish the job when Martin resisted. His words were heavy, deliberate, and filled with spite. Yet Ethan was no innocent victim himself. The prosecution reminded the jury of his violent past, his obsession with Jennifer, and the likelihood that his version of events was twisted to save himself. Jennifer, when it was her turn, spoke with trembling hand. She admitted to the affair, admitted to betraying her marriage, but insisted she had never wanted Martin dead. She painted Ethan as controlling, possessive, and increasingly unhinged. According to her, he had acted alone out of jealousy, killing Martin without her knowledge, and framing her when the investigation closed in. She pleaded with the jury to believe she was a woman trapped in an affair she could not escape, not a cold-blooded conspirator. The jury was left with two versions of the truth, both filled with shadows and contradictions. In one, Jennifer was the manipulative wife, who used her lover as a weapon. In the other, she was the victim of a dangerous man who had taken matters into his own hands. The evidence tied them both to the crime, but the question of who truly orchestrated Martin Hale's death loomed over the deliberations. Clara Denslow, sitting quietly in the gallery, felt the weight of betrayal heavier than most. She had been Jennifer's closest friend, had trusted her, and had believed in the perfect image she projected. Now she listened to the details of a life she never truly knew. The messages Jennifer had once sent her about wanting freedom echoed in her mind. Clara realized that whether Jennifer had planned every detail or not, she had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. The woman she once admired was gone, replaced by someone who had allowed her secret desires to spiral into destruction. When the verdict was read, the room fell silent. Ethan Veynor was found guilty of murder, his role as the one who delivered the fatal blow undeniable. Jennifer Gledhill was found guilty of conspiracy and financial fraud, the evidence of her involvement too strong to ignore. She was sentenced to decades in prison, her glamorous life reduced to cold walls and barbed wire. Ethan too would spend the rest of his life behind bars. The intensity that once drew Jennifer in, now only a reminder of the danger she had embraced. The story spread far beyond the town. News outlets across the country covered the case, using it as a cautionary tale of how quickly passion can twist into violence. The image of Jennifer, once celebrated as a symbol of elegance, was now splashed across headlines as a fallen woman, whose secrets had consumed her. For Detective Lorna Greaves, the case was another example of how appearances can deceive. What seemed like a perfect marriage had been rotting from within, and it took one night of violence for the truth to come crashing out. She closed her files knowing justice, at least by the court's measure, had been served, but also recognizing that no sentence could undo the tragedy. A man was dead, 2 lives were destroyed, and the ripple effect would scar everyone connected to them. Jennifer's story became a chilling reminder that beneath even the most flawless surface can lie betrayal, greed, and desperation. The affair that once gave her excitement had spiraled into murder, and the freedom she longed for had turned into a prison she could never escape. The case of Jennifer Gledhill was remembered not only as a story of crime, but as a stark lesson in how secrets once set free can devour everything in their path.